Who likes watching a good sci-fi movie? I enjoy science fiction. The genre sort of appeals to me. I especially like the science fiction movie where you've got an alien monster attacking the Earth, and eventually is this great coming together of the heroes or the hero in a final battle, and then all of a sudden the victor comes through, and the alien monster is destroyed, and there's a sense of the human spirit conquering all these terrible things. It's kind of that way for me this year. I've kind of reflected over what this year means to me. And if I had to call this year a name or categorize it, I'd call it the year of the monsters. It started off with me, of course, losing my dream job, my position I enjoyed teaching in a fellowship. It had betrayal involved in it. It had some very sad stories to it, lying and deception. It had heartbreak. I had to face depression and a few of those ugly things that you go through when you feel disempowered. It was certainly a year that I wouldn't wish on anyone at all. I was considering this idea of confronting the monsters. The truth is the majority of our monsters are not. In fact, none of them are alien based, and the majority of our monsters are all internal monsters. They're monsters within. Most people who suffer from depression or anxiety or just normal life when it can go bad, quite often we tend to be dealing not so much with the external circumstances that triggered the terrible stuff that we face. Often the monsters we face are our own phobias, our own fears, the damage done, the self-talk, and the behaviours that we pick up because of the unfairness of life at times. When you've been betrayed, or you feel that you've been lied about, or you feel you've been lied to, when you feel that something of your life has in fact been unreal, and you feel that sense of violation, it can certainly lead you to a dark place. And I remember a night a number of months ago where I was certainly in a very dark place, facing my monsters within. I had a bad night, and I'm sharing something very personal now about a struggle I had. I had a very dark night a number of months ago where I ended up being so sad and so grief-stricken, struck because of the events that had happened, and that awful sense that you feel where you get this terrible emptiness where people that you thought you loved, people that you thought loved you, people that you cared for, or people that you were close to end up betraying you or doing nasty things to you to preserve themselves. I had a very dark night, and I remember sitting on a hill by myself, feeling very, very, very depressed and very, very sad for myself. Then I noticed that I was dealing with a monster within. The truth is, I wanted to just die. I wanted my life to finish, and I felt that life had finished its course for me. It was an awful moment. I remember feeling fairly broken. I remember feeling angry and frustrated. And I remember raising my voice up and just shouting at the sky and shouting at God and wondering why all this had happened. A few minutes later, it was all very silent for me. And I was sitting down in this particular place, just looking up at the sky and realizing that the stars were still shining, that the moon was still somewhere up there, and the truth is life was continuing on. I walked home exhausted that night and barely making one step in front of the other, simply because of the exhaustion and, if you like, my fighting my own monster. My wife Tanya rang me and eventually came up and collected me and took me home. The monsters within, we all have them at times. Terrible pains, disappointments, betrayals, lies, griefs, and frustrations that grow up from a single incident and eventually become full-fledged, out-of-control monsters, talking into our lives, turning us upside down, making us bitter, making us sad, taking joy from us. Some people fight their monsters, others just run from them, or some just are so overwhelmed by their monsters within they just stay right where they are, unable to work their issues through. But I've come to the conclusion that we must face our monsters. We must have the courage to deal with the thinking, the feelings, and the attitudes that define the negativities in our lives. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and fight those monsters within. It kind of reminds me of the image of the knight coming against the dragon, and how they had this armor on themselves and this horse underneath them and this lance, and they would just charge this terrible fire-breathing monster as if they themselves would actually survive such an event. But it does take that kind of courage to stand up and to walk forward and to deal with the stuff within. There's a young man called Joshua in the Old Testament, and he's given responsibility for leading Israel, and he's pretty well out of his depth, and he's feeling the fear of failure and the fear of uncertainty. And God spoke to him, and God said, "Be strong and courageous, do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." One of the virtues of faith, even in the dark place, even when you're facing your monsters, is that you can have that hope that God is with you even in darkness. For me, I'm not going to tell you that I felt good that night. I'm not going to tell you that I felt good for months after that night. And I'm not going to tell you that I felt God patting me on the back saying, it's going to be all fine. What I will tell you is that there is this faith that I have that says that we can be strong and we can be courageous. There is this belief that there is an eternal being, this all-knowing being, who does walk with us through our darkness, our dark nights. But that doesn't remove the reality that we still have to be courageous, we still have to be strong, and we still have to be determined. Nothing is resolved through wishful thinking, denialism, or lying or hiding from things. Nothing is resolved by pretending it's just going to be okay, wishalizing, or claiming stupid faith statements. Everything is resolved when humans and God work together and we push forward. It takes us to be strong and courageous to deal with our monsters within. How are you going? Are you standing against your monsters? Are you fighting your monsters? Are you willing to go forward and confront your monsters? Or are you going to choose the path of the person who wants to hide and pretend those monsters will just disappear? They don't. My real encouragement for you this week is to be strong and be courageous. Go forward, trust God, and also be determined enough to allow yourself to stand against the monsters within. God bless and have a good week.